Eldad the Danite. These traditions are important because they recant one of the earliest Israelite diasporas known throughout all of Jewish history. It was even written in the Talmudic writings. So let's deal with the history of Eldad ben Mali. The oral traditions of Eldad begins in the land of Israel during the time of Jeroboam's succession and the time of the split of the kingdom of Israel. Specifically, during this time, King Jeroboam wanted the Danites to make war against the tribes of Judah. However, instead of shedding blood against their brother and making war against their brother, they proclaimed throughout all the land of Dan to fly to Egypt and kill all the inhabitants of Egypt. But how could you fly to Egypt? Asked one of the princes. Is it not written throughout the law that ye shall see them again no more? However, it is said that God gave the Danites good advice to go up the river Pishon and to continue their wanderings on camels and to encamp into the land of Cush. After growing plentiful year after year, it is said that three other tribes, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, came and encamped with the Danites within the land of Cush. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to this story and this history, many authors and historians fail to continue the story of Eldad, falling short within the boundaries of Cush. But indeed, we can go further west, so let's dig into that. Now, to do that, we'll be looking into the French source Relation d'Eldad the Danite to get some further insight, because interestingly, they go deeper into this history. We'll be beginning on page 28, and everything we'll be reading from specifically will be highlighted to the left and the translation will be to the right. So, beginning on page 28, it reads, "At that time, several families of three other tribes of Zebulun, Asher, and Naphtali also went out and encamped in Arabia until they reached the borders of Cush. They made war on the Cushites and killed so many that they depopulated a space of 4 days by 4 days to the place occupied by their brothers of the race of Dan, having chosen Havilah as his home, which should not be confused with the eastern Havilah, where there is gold, and Seba, and Sabta, and Ramah, and Sabat Cha, and Sheba, and Dedan. These 4 tribes, Dan, Zebulun, Asher, and Naphtali, were forced to fight against these 7 kingdoms." Page 29. "Soon they made the heads of their enemies bow before them, and established themselves in their places in these 7 kingdoms. Nevertheless, every year until today, they are in hostility with 7 other tribes, forming as many sovereignties, called Damani, Kabar, Koratia, Bedra, Nabat, Aur, and Yoba. As a result of these continuous wars, many Israelites were scattered beyond the rivers of Cush, so that the word of the prophet would be fulfilled. From beyond the rivers of Cush, my scattered worshippers will bring me my offering." So thus far, after reading this book, we've gained insight on the fact that 4 tribes, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, made their way into the land of Cush before continuing beyond the rivers of Ethiopia into a land known as Havilah. And they said specifically not to be confused with the eastern Havilah. So if not the eastern Havilah, then where is the Havilah that Eldad was making mention to? Interestingly, if we take a look into the book, The Itinerary of Rabbi Benjamin of Tudela, he mentions something very, very similar that connects to what Eldad was claiming. So if we start on page 146, it reads, "From Aswan to Chula, 12 days. This place contains about 300 Jews and is the starting point of the caravans who transverse the desert Al-Tahara or Al-Sahara in 50 days on their way to Sevilla, the Chavila of Scripture, which is in the country of Ghana. So interestingly, Rabbi Tudela says that this Chavila or Sevilla or Havila is in the country of Ghana. And we know that this is specifically in West Africa and not in East Africa, because on page 146, he goes on to say that this country lies westward of Kush or Abyssinia. But let's dig deeper into that. And to do that, we're going to go to Archives Moroccains, Volume 6. On page 68, it mentions something very, very interesting. It says quite simply that Eldad calls Negritia by the name of Havila. And last time I checked, Negritia is the name of West Africa. So we actually have two Jewish historians, Rabbi Benjamin as well as Eldad the Danite, placing Havila within West Africa. Is this because places like Ghana is referenced as the land of gold as well? But let's continue to dig into this history. And to do that, we're going to try to identify one more location that Eldad made mention to, and that is the Sambatyon River. So let's go to a history of the Jewish people to get a little bit more information on the details surrounding this Sambatyon River. Starting on page 278, it reads, Eldad, son of Mali the Danite, alleged that he was a descendant of the tribe of Dan. He related that this tribe had immigrated from their Palestinian home so as not to take part in the civil war at that time of Jerusalem's secession. And were residing in the land of Havila beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. 3 other tribes, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, were with them. These had joined them in the times of Sennacherib. Opposite them lived the children of Moses, sprung from those Levites who had mutilated the fingers of their right hand rather to sing the songs of Zion by the rivers of Babylon, and had then been translated by a cloud to their present abode. His own people, so Eldad continued, were able to communicate with them only from afar, since they were cut off from one another by a waterless torrent which carried masses of sand and rubble with such terrific force that it could crush an iron mountain. This impassable river rested on the Sabbath day when it was enveloped in a thick mist. Hence the river was named Sambatyon. Now after reading this, a river didn't necessarily pop up in my head. Now let's reread over these details to get an understanding of exactly what Eldad was talking about. It says, his own people, so Eldad continued, were able to communicate with them only from afar, since they were cut off from one another by a waterless torrent, which carried masses of sand and rubble with such terrific force that it could crush an iron mountain. This impassable river rested on a Sabbath day when it was enveloped in a thick mist. Hence, the river was named Sambatyon. So after reading this again, it really sounds as if Eldad was describing a desert. If we go back to the itinerary of Rabbi Benjamin of Tudela, he describes the Sahara Desert that the Jews traverse the same way Eldad described the Sambatyon River. And it reads, from Aswan to Chula, 12 days. This place contains about 300 Jews and is the starting point of the caravans who traverse the desert Al-Tahara in 50 days on their way to Sevilla, the Chavila of Scripture, which is in the country of Ghana. This desert contains mountains of sand, and whenever a storm arises, the caravans are exposed to the imminent danger of being buried alive by the sand. Alright, so now we're starting to see why Eldad described the Sahara Desert as a waterless torrent which carried masses of sand and rubble. Let's continue on to the empires of medieval West Africa, because this complements the traditions of Eldad as well. And it reads, on the southern fringe of the Sahara is the Sahel, a marginal area of transition from desert to savanna. Sahel is the Arabic word for shore. It is as if the Sahara were a great ocean of sand and rock. The camels that transport goods across the desert were ships, and the large market towns were the sea ports. Alright, so now we should definitely have an understanding of why Eldad referred to this desert, this Sahara, as a great ocean of sand and rock, as a waterless torrent. So now that we went through that information, let's go even deeper into proving that West Africa was the location of Eldad and his tribesmen. And to do that, we're going to visit another French source by the title of Archives Marocains, Volume 6. Starting on page 67, it reads, Eldad the Danite appeared in the cities of the coast of the Maghreb around 860 to 880. He had come from the desert, from Sudan or Nigritia, and claimed to belong to the independent Jewish tribes of the Danites, one of the 10 extinct tribes of Israel, which he said had immigrated from Ethiopia or Nigritia. He spoke only Hebrew, but a special Hebrew, a dialect which differs from all that we know of this language, and which could be linked to the Hebrew Phoenician. Apart from the Danites, his own tribe, they were in Nigritia, according to him. 3 other tribes of Israel, enjoying all them a considerable political and material prosperity, and making war on the Negro kingdoms situated in the desert and separated from the Israelites by a sabbatical river which drew during the week streams of sand and stone. Continuing on to the footnotes of page 67, it reads, the tribes of Dan would have come to Ethiopia from Egypt, while the 3 other Jewish tribes of Nigritia, those of Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, would have come from Arabia, which confirms the hypothesis put forward by Mr. Lee Chandler on the origins of Jews in West Africa. Continuing on. It is difficult not to see in all this information, which is both reality and legend, data on the migrations of the Judaizing and Libo-Punic tribes driven back by the Muslims as far as the ocean, and from there to the Sudan. Indeed, the existence of the Jewish independence in the Sahara around the 9th and 1st centuries is confirmed by the traditions of Kitab el-Adunai that we have already mentioned, as well as certain indications of other Arab historians, the most important of which is that of Qatar's. Continuing on to page 71, it reads, Eldad certainly visited certain Jewish tribes in the Sahara. He has heard many things said of certain others. He knows its uses and beliefs to the point that Mr. Epstein has succeeded in identifying them with those of the Phalashas, whose common Hellenic origin with the ancient warriors of Caesarea had been supposed by us. It is also possible that he confused the Bene Musa with the powerful tribe of Masai, which he may have not have visited himself, since we have managed to identify most of the names of Negro kingdoms with geographical names of the Adrar region of French Mauritania and even of Western Sudan. We would therefore not follow Mr. Epstein when he refuses to admit that West Africa was the country of origin of the Danite.
I said, hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
So wait 1 second. You mean to tell me that authors actually refuse to admit that West Africa was the country of origin of Eldad the Danite and his tribesmen? Is this why throughout history we always see this story referring to Ethiopian Jews opposed to West African? But let's continue to bring out this groundbreaking information and show where Eldad and his Israelite relatives settled within West Africa. Reading from page 71, it reads, "We will devote a separate study to it among the geographical names given by Eldad and often manipulated by the copyists. We thought we could identify a certain number, of which here are a few: Adrar or Adrar, Todima or Kadima, Kukia, Countu or Kumtu, Toreka or Tekror, Tukulur, Kuba or Kechi, Karma or Kartas, and additionally, let us point out the names of Hohom and Zomaron, which we find in southern Morocco." Now let me read over those names one more time, just in case these locations went over your head. It reads, locations such as Adrar, Todima or Kadima, Kukuya, Countu or Kumtu, Toreka or Tukor, Tukulur, Kuba or Kechi, Karma or Kartas, and additionally Hohom and Zomaron in southern Morocco. So these West African territories is where these northern tribes settled and formed a kingdom, according to Eldad. Even if we continue, we'll find something else that's very confirming. And it reads, "It must be added to this information that Eldad the Danite had been accompanied in his travels by another Jew of the desert, who had traced his origin to the tribe of Asher, son of Jacob, or among the Mandi or Suniki tribes, of which some trace their origins to the chiefs of the tribes of Israel."